All right, welcome back to the shop. I'm playing with a 1988 Wrangler today. It's a YJ. It's really bright. I'm working outside. Hopefully this camera will work with us today. Hey, if you hadn't hit that subscribe button, check that thing out in the left corner of your screen down there. Give it a tap. Give me a thumbs up. Stick around, watch the other videos on the channel, and leave me some comments, feedbacks on that. Today on this Wrangler, we got a temperature gauge that's bugging out. Coolant temperature gauge. So you get in here and you crank it up, and like after like a minute of running, she goes pegged out. Okay, that's your temp gauge. She's pegged. At first it'll start out kind of looking normal, then like after a minute it's bam, full tilt pegged out. So there's a test for this, and it's pretty basic. Your coolant temperature sensor is right here, the back of the head. It's a one wire deal. It just pops on. I've got an alligator clip test lead to the wire that goes to it, and it goes to your gauge, and then it got it to ground. So when you got it grounded out and it pegs the gauge out, it's most likely your sensor that's bad. And then watch when I take the ground off. We'll unclip the ground and we'll roll the key back on. Gauge doesn't do anything. I'm gonna leave the key on. We're gonna pop this test lead all the way off. I'm gonna push it back down. Oops. Drop it on the ground. Wipe the grease off my fingers a little bit. And you can see it's dead. See, it went straight back to pegged out. And the engine ain't even running, and the engine's not even hot. So it leads me to believe with that test that my gauge is probably okay, because it's going full sweep. It's going boop. But the sensor's probably just dead. Those things are like $10. So I've got one coming. They didn't have one on the shelf at the local store, part store that I use, but they ordered one. It'll be here later this afternoon. We'll screw that thing in the back of the head and see how she acts after that. This little Jeep is an old friend of mine. He had it in storage for about 5 or 6 years or so. 5 years, I think. It had a 2016 tag on it. This is currently August 2021, so it's been in storage. He brought it to me just to kind of comb it over. He wants to start driving it again just as a toy, and so I changed all the fluids, changed the oil. I hadn't changed the oil filter yet, so I'm going to change the oil twice. I wanted to run it a little bit and then change the filter. So I dropped the oil just to make sure there wasn't any water or anything in it, and just to get that old acidic oil out, and put fresh oil in it. And let's see, what else do we do? We changed the front and rear diff fluid, changed the transfer case fluid, and I changed the fluid in the gearbox and the transmission. And that's the only fluid that looked bad. Had some metal in it, just like it was gray. The fluid was gray when it came out. I didn't see any chunks come out, and I have driven the vehicle just a little bit around, right around here in my little community, like just a couple back roads, like 2 or 3 back roads, just for like 5 minutes. And it shifts okay. I haven't been through all the gears because I haven't been able to get it up fast enough. So I've been through like first, second, third in reverse, and all those work fine. The brakes are fine. I am going to flush the brake fluid out. I haven't done that yet. That will happen before it leaves, and I'm going to change the oil and the filter again one more time. I think that's all we're going to do. Oh yeah, I put a battery in it. When it first got here, I put a battery and a terminal. When I loosened it up, it just crumbled, fell apart, broke in half basically. So I got a new lead on it, got the new battery in it. She runs good. It's had a new engine put in it at one time. I believe it's a excuse me, I believe it's a Jasper remanufactured engine. If I had my guess, that's what they look like, because I was a Jasper engines dealer for years. Pretty sure that's what that is. I didn't comb it over to find a sticker, but I bet you'll find a Jasper sticker on there somewhere. I could be wrong. She runs pretty good. I was gonna drain the gas tank, but when I popped the lid off the gas, smelled it. I just put my nose to the gas filler. It smelled okay. Didn't smell funky dead, like, so I think somebody may have put gas in it at one point. So the gas smelled okay. I don't know. He said he hadn't put any in it, but it didn't smell that bad. It did come on a tow truck from probably 30 or 40 miles away, I would guess, 50 maybe. So maybe just sloshing all that gas around on the tow truck stirred it up enough, because it seems to run okay. The exhaust stinks just a little bit, like it might be a little on the lean side. I don't have any kind of air fuel probe to stick in the tailpipe to verify that. Although I need to get one of those, because I'm starting to see a lot of old carbureted stuff again. I used to be the carburetor guy. Everybody bring me their carburetor stuff when I had my chassis dyno. We'd stick it on the chassis dyno and adjust the carburetors with a little load, and it was pretty easy. But I sold all that equipment off years ago. Kind of wish I had a commercial shop still with the room and a couple employees to help out in a chassis dyno. That was nice. That was a nice tool to have. Anyway, so we're gonna I'm gonna wait for that temp sensor, because I want to drive this. I'm gonna put some fresh gas on top of what's in it. I think it's got about a half a tank. We're gonna let's see, can't remember. Yeah, it's got about a half a tank. So what I'll probably do is go throw some 93 on top of that and put a few miles on this thing and see how she runs after we get some good gas stirred up in it. Like I said, she runs fine now. It took me a few minutes to get the carburetor to prime up. It didn't want to squirt because it was just so dry. I'd been sitting for so long, but once I got some gas pumped up to it and put a little gas down in the carburetor, it fired right up. Of course, I didn't film any of that. I should have. I didn't film any of the changing the fluids. I just didn't think I was going to make a video at all on this, but I thought I wanted to show you guys real quickly how to test for that coolant temp sensor problem, because that's kind of common on these, and I'm sure a lot of people will run into that. So basically just ground that lead out, you know, that lead that goes back to that sensor. If it grounds out, when you ground it out and with the key on, it pegs the gauge, your sensor's probably bad. And like I said, they're 10 bucks, so it's not like it's going to break you to just screw one in and try it and see what happens. Rarely do the gauges go bad. It's typically the sending units or sensors, whatever you want to call it. This thing is got quite a few emissions stuff that look like people have bypassed and altered over the years, but this thing doesn't have to have emissions in the state of Georgia anymore, so we're not going to worry about it too much. All right, so we'll wait on our sensor to show up, and we will go throw some gas in it, drive her around, and you know what, I may just go ahead and go throw some gas in it while I'm waiting on that sensor to get here, just to kill that bird. I need to go ahead and button this thing up so he can get it out of here. I know it's not overheating because I've sit here and monitored it with a temp gun over and over again for the last few weeks. I've just been working on this on the side, so I know it's not overheating, the fan's working and all that good stuff. So I'll just go throw some gas in it, we'll drive it around a minute. Then when the temp sensor gets here, we'll drive it some more. The idea is just to make sure this thing's going to be reliable for him to run around on. I believe he lives in Atlanta. We live about 45 minutes north of Atlanta to an hour, depending on traffic, in the foothill of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And So he's got to be able to make sure it drives back to Atlanta and drives around and all that good stuff. So, all right, let's go get some gas. Our sensor came in for our Wrangler, just a standard deal, and it was about 17 bucks. So we're gonna screw that thing in, plug it back up, and see what happens. Should fix it. Probably gonna lose a little bit of coolant. Should have put a socket on it, but you know me, I'm a wrench guy. Always turning wrenches. Sometimes they just don't work the smartest. That's why I'm a stupid mechanic. Probably ought to stick a little Teflon on it. For this kind of stuff, I like the liquid Teflon. Just squeeze a little bit. It's just pipe sealer, pipe thread sealer. Just put a little bit on the threads. Make a gigantic mess because you're trying to do it one-handed. Wipe it off. And it has pipe thread, so you just get it snug. You don't have to run it all the way down. Just tighten it up. You don't have to kung fu grip it. You know, pipe threaded stuff, just plug it back up. Pipe threaded stuff is it's kind of tapered a little bit, so it tightens up as it goes in. You don't have to bottom it out. It's not how it works. So let's put this stuff up, then we'll go for a test drive. Make sure everything's okay. All right, we're going for a test drive. When I first hooked this up, now we're reading, I don't know, 180 degrees or something like that. When I first hooked this up, it pegged out. The new one pegged out. So I was like, well, that's not good. My gauge is probably bad. So I did an ohm test on the original one, and it was really high. It was like 23,000. It's supposed to be about 2,000. And once it gets hot, it's supposed to, the ohms are supposed to come down. I didn't show you that, but I can still show you that on a bench test, and then back on this, and I'll do that in a minute when we get done driving, or probably in the morning since it's about to get dark. But as of right now, the temperature gauge is working, and it was not working earlier. It was staying pegged solid. put some miles on this old Jeep. Run around town for a little bit, so make sure everything's okay, and I'll see you back in the shop. Okay, sorry about the clutter on the toolbox, but we're going to show you an amp test or an ohms test real quick. We'll set our multimeter to ohms. We got open lead, 0.3. So basically all you got to do is do an ohm test between where the sensor hooks up. Let's see if we can crop this up. Where the sensor hooks up in the body, and it should be 2400. .398. It's supposed to be 2.400, I believe. So let's go check it on the car, the new one. Okay, so I'm gonna unplug it. So this one's 2.687, 2.683. This is cold. I have not cranked this. This is the next morning from the last shot when I was driving it. We're going to crank it up, let it warm up, and see what it goes to. Should change the resistance. Okay, so this one tested pretty close to the one I just pulled out. And again, it's back to pegging the gauge out. Now I did that yesterday when I installed it. And then I was like, well, I'm gonna go drive it. And I backed up the driveway and looked down, and it was reading what I'm assuming was right. So I want to see what's going on here on this particular issue here and see if we can't figure it out. I've got this Jeep for a little bit. The customer's going to leave it here for a couple more weeks. So we're going to play with that and try to figure out what's going on. Do I have a bad sensor out of the box? I'd like to go maybe get another one and do a ohm test on another new one and see what the differences are. Because we'll see, you know, as this thing warms up. I just fired it up. What the gauge does here. It sure does act like the sensor's bad, not the gauge. All right, we'll let it warm up a little bit, and then we'll do another ohm test on it and see if the ohms should drop as the engine gets warmer. The ohm should come down, I believe, and that's what makes the gauge, supposed to make the gauge go up and down. It's warmed up. We're going to check it again, see where what the ohm test shows. $284. It's dropped quite a bit as it's got hot. Now we'll see what the gauge is doing. Okay, consider I'm having a little issue with that gauge, and we got a new sending unit, and it seems to be working with the ohm test. I'm going to pull this gauge cluster out and see if we've got a corrosion problem. Should just be 6 Phillips head screws. Should pop this whole panel out, the trim panel, and then the gauge will have screws. The gauge cluster will have screws behind it. So we'll pull that out real quick. Okay, clusters, the bezel's off, so then we'll pull the cluster out. Okay, cluster's out. That's our culprit right there. This is one we're having problems with. There is a little bit of corrosion on the terminals going in, so I'll take a little piece of emery cloth or fine grit sandpaper and just touch up those little connections, put a little dielectric grease on them, and right here I'll take this little 8mm, I believe it is, off, and I'll lightly sand the connections that are underneath it. And that's the only one we're having any issues with right now, so that's the only one I'm going to mess with. Really, these boards get so old, and I don't want to disturb it unless I have to. So anyway, we'll pop that out real quick and touch up the sanding, touch up the connections. All right, so 9/32 on this connection. Does not want to come off there. Goes. All right, so I'm going to clean up these connections here and here and here, and hopefully that'll take care of our problem. We'll put a little tiny bit of dielectric grease on, so it'll get a better contact. So I'll work on this for a little while, cleaning up this. It's going to take a little while, and we'll get back. Alright, so I checked, cleaned all my connections and put the dielectric grease on. You can see it's not pegged out anymore. So I think we've got that fixed. I'm sweating to death out here. It's hotter than the sun. I'm gonna go put trim screws back in, and I'll go for a test drive and make sure everything's okay. And like I said, I'm going to drive this thing on and off for the next couple of weeks just to check everything out, because it's been sitting for like 5 or 6 years. He wants me to just comb it over and make sure nothing else is going on after we got all the fluids and stuff changed. So if you got anything out of this, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Hopefully you learned something. We definitely fixed something today. That's good progress. Catch me in the next one. Peace.